Morning all.
Good morning, everyone.
Just got people joining in. We've just hit right on start time, but we'll give it another minute. I hope everyone is well. Got about 9 people joined. There's a few others that have said they're coming, so we'll just give it to 11:02 Eastern time, and then we'll kick off. All right, we will kick off. So we are recording this, and then the recordings are made available on the website after the meeting, and we also send out the slide deck to any attendees. So welcome all. We don't have Glenn Marsh with us today. He's got some personal issues. But we do have Paul Wright. But I would like to just start off by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I might throw over to Paul to run us through the agenda.
Well, Yuma, everybody, it's I'm from Ngunnawal country down in the ACT. But okay, running through today's agenda, obviously I'm Paul Wright, co-chair of the RAC TAG group, also co-chair of RACTA, the Training Alliance group, and a trainer at Canberra Institute of Technology. Welcome to everybody. Glad everyone can join us. So today we're just going to run through updates on the project and the maintenance of what's been happening at PSO and managing the relevant TAG groups. Have a little chat about the request summary for the request and request for advice for a TAG report. You'll probably be a little bit, shall we say, amazed at the response rate. Just open up items for general discussion. And then we'll close the meeting out for the rest of the, and that'll see us out. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Paul. And just on for those of you who've been here in the past, we used to do sort of around the grounds, get everyone to introduce themselves. There are some new people on board, but what we just want to do now is just, if you'd like to, you can pop your name and who you represent and your email into the chat. So if anyone wants to reach out to you online around any discussions, but we find that just takes up a bit too much time in the meeting going around, and most people, a lot of people do know each other already. So we've just moved on from that now. Right, so PSO updates, and specifically the ones related to the UEE RAC industry, or the HVAC R, whichever we want to call it. So the project around the RA51 review is done and complete, published on TGA. Anyone in RTO space should be well aware of that. We have sent out a little bit of correspondence around implementing the new unit, the new qualification. So that one is pretty much done and dusted. Teach out until March next year for the old unit and the old qualification. So one of our other projects been running for quite a while, that creating an energy sector gateway. It's got 2 parts to it, this one. And the first part is out for public consultation at the moment, and that is just some updates to the Cert 2 Career Start and also the Cert 2 in Sustainable Energy. And it's really just updating the superseded units. So that's out for public government consultation now. You'll find that via our website there. And open until the 4th of August for that consultation period. The idea then is to get that, proceed with getting those qualifications updated and published just with those superseded units corrected. And then that will get rolled into the full UEE review to review those quals in their entirety. You know, are the units in them correct, etc. Update to new templates, but potentially bring some new units in, move some electives around. All that stuff's on the table as part of that UEE review for those qualifications. But we just really wanted to get them usable for RDOs because they're those units have been superseded for quite a while now, so we didn't want it to get caught up, because the full UEE project is sort of looking at a 2027 publishing date. So we'll definitely have those updated before then, assuming feedback when that's incorporated and progression through the TPOF system and skills ministers, etc. We have 10 new projects in total. The full UEE review is one of them, and we'll talk about that in depth later on, and particularly in its relationship to this industry. But we've got various other ones, so just have a look at our website for any that may interest you. We will talk about a couple of the research projects in a little bit more detail shortly. And yeah, that's well, I won't go into too much depth around those. We'll talk about the ones that are relevant in our general discussion later on. I'll hand back to Paul now because he really wanted to talk about this one.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Just going back on the previous item there, Brett, you mentioned that there's pathways and gateways. So could you just give us a little bit of a clearer direction on?
Sorry, Paul, I did
the variation of those two?
I forgot about the gateway. It was in my notes.
That's okay.
So what we're calling the gateway qualification is primarily going to be aimed at vet in schools. It'll be a brand new qualification. It won't be limited to vet in schools. So it could be like, there's a group in the NT up here, YouthWorks, who do some work with recent school leavers having trouble finding jobs, or they have jobs but they're looking for more of a career. And that gateway is really going to be a taster for right across the energy sector industry. How it relates to the HVAC R, we're developing a unit around climate control and energy efficient systems. And it's really in the initial development phase with the tech committee. But we have Noel Monkman from ARC sent through some stuff around the Cert 2 project a while back, and we've sort of borrowed some of what Noel sent through in developing the very initial drafts of those units. So it'll be a watch this space for when those units are released for broader consultation. But there's units around different renewable sources in there as well. It's really trying to have a taster right across industry, rather than the traditional Cert 2 Career Start pretty much funnels them into either electrotechnology, or they could go into the refrigeration qual from that, but that tends to be sort of it. We're really looking at the broader sector, and some real base units that are designed around that, the learner cohort level at that either vet in schools or recent school leavers, or it could even be like mothers going back into the workforce. They've never really had a proper career path, and they're looking to get into a skilled occupation. That's a real starting point for anyone looking to get into the energy sector, is what we're aiming to do with that unit. So keep an eye on the it's called the Gateway Project on the website. Thanks for the prompt, Paul, because I totally forgot that one. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries, Brett. That's great.
We'll have some questions later, but if anyone's got any questions now, feel free to pop your hand up or pop them in the chat. We'll go on to the tag report and request for advice, Mr. Wright.
Sure. So yes, PSA did send out requests for advice. back in February, and you see that there was a lot of feedback provided. Wonder where that came from. It's like ACT. Anyhow, look, the reality is that, for the betterment of qualifications and the industry as a whole, feedback is really going to be, a key ingredient to getting things right here, team. So, can only really strongly advise that you need to participate. You have the opportunity. So back then we had 20, this is February meeting, we had 20 attendees, some from PSO, obviously 14 actuals. There was 70% of the registrations. People said they could take it, and obviously there were only 14% of attendees that completed the request for information. Anyways, as I said, got to throw the ingredients in the pot in order to get something to come out and suit us all. Righto,
Yep.
Brett?
Correct. And just on that request for advice, so there'll be one comes out following this meeting, probably around early August. It'll be emailed to all the attendees. And the questions for that will be based around when we open up for general discussion in a little bit of time. The questions will really be based around what gets raised today, your concerns, people's ideas. So it is really important we've got similar numbers today. We've probably got about around that 14 attendees again. So we'd really encourage that we'd really like to see everyone, it's only about a 10-minute exercise, I think, that request for advice. So if you can get that filled in and sent back, it's all digital. That's really what we base our future thinking around. This is one of the mediums that we gather information, and particularly with that full UEE review at the moment. And for this audience, the RA units and the refrigeration air conditioning quals, really the focus, and so we'll be looking for some people's input there. So, as Paul said, encourage you to throw some ingredients into the pot. So a couple of research projects we got happening amongst those 10. Low and no enrolments in qualifications. So there are a couple in the refrigeration sector at the diploma level that there's not even any RTOs with them on scope. So we've reached out to ARC, ERA and AMPCA just for their feedback and hopefully from their stakeholders around those quals and whether they see what the benefits are in the various quals with the low and no enrolment. So we've gathered that feedback now, and we're just consolidating it, and then we'll be looking at a bit wider feedback once we sort of write a report based on what those key industry groups have told us around those qualifications, with particularly the ones with no enrolments. And then there's units of competency that fall into the low and no enrolments too, but they'll probably be part of that full UEE review when we get down to unit level in that. And we've also got our licensing mapping exercise happening. So the initial mapping's done and an initial report been sent through the department. And now we're at the stage of targeted stakeholder consultation. So that includes, but not limited to, the state and territory regulators, licensing authorities, and Trades Recognition Australia. And also, because there's a piece in that project around the capstone units. So we're also reaching out to RDOs around capstone, and also so in the instance of like Victoria, where you have that licensing assessment. So that the institutes that are delivering those will be our targeted research in that area. I'll throw back over to you, Paul, to have a chat about this one.
Yeah, I just raised my hand in relation to that, Brett, and dare I say it, there's been murmurings in the background in relation to licensing, national. Has there been anything further raised in that area?
So this project, even though the announcement of it coincided with the announcement around that national licensing, that's not actually a PSO project. That's the regulators that'll drive that.
Okay.
This is really about mapping the differences between the areas, highlighting that, and that the report could end up as part of that discussion because of the differences between the states and jurisdictions. But
Yep.
yeah, our remit is certainly not in this project around that national licensing piece. That'll be outside of us.
Okay. Yep. Great. So as Brett mentioned, so they have sent out a survey, which is available there for everybody to have a look at in relation to development survey for the support and the review of the 3225 Certificate 3, and obviously all of our training products. So it's been sent out to major players in the industry who are hopefully forwarding that on to the wider community, so further feedback can be obtained and see where we're going from there. The survey closes on the 8th of August, so I can just encourage you, please provide some feedback in relation to that. It's obviously about, current needs and future needs. Where are we going? We don't want to be, as best possible, lagging too far behind, what industry are actually doing at the time, and having majorly outdated items that aren't necessarily relevant in certain areas. So yeah, please put your feedback in. It's really important.
Thanks for that, Paul. And yeah, look, as Paul said, and we're certainly hoping for some industry feedback through those key orgs that have sent it out, but open to RTOs as well. And it's around the current training and gaps you see with people coming out of that training. Vanessa's just asked a question on the chat about sharing the mapping report. That was just a initial one, Vanessa, that's been sent to the department. We will be, I don't know if Matt, are you on? Could you give us just an update on that project, Matt or Phil?
Yeah, I can give an update on that. Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, it was just an initial draft as part of one of our milestones that we got to put into Jura along the way of the process. But as soon as the project's finished and approved, all the information will definitely be up on the website. The updates will go up on the website as we're going through the project. But yeah, when complete, we want to get that up on the website. The idea being that it can be a great resource for organisations or people that have these licenses about what they might need if they were going to transition to a different state or territory, or into a different job application or something along those lines. So most definitely we want to have all that information up on our website so everyone can use it. So the next stage, we've done all the desktop analysis and got that draft in, but now we've got to go out to stakeholders and just verify all that information, go to the licensing, to the regulators, to the RTOs, and all that sort of thing. So just to make sure that we're all correct in everything we're doing. But yeah, definitely want it up on our website. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Phil. So just on the full UEE review project that we've kicked off, because of the size of the training package and the different areas, we decided to get some subject matter expert groups together, and they're listed down the right-hand side of that slide. So we've got a data and voice group, a diploma and advanced diploma group, electronics and comms, electrical general, fire and security, HVAC R, hazardous areas, instro and controls, renewable and rail signalling. So the deadline to apply for that closes this Friday, the 25th. We extended that by a week. So there is a link there, and Rachel no doubt pop one in the chat as she's been popping all the links in. So, I mean, this audience, obviously a lot of you are going to be interested in the HVAC-R, but you could also have some side areas. I know, for example, Ben Peters, I noticed you're on the call. Fire and security might be an area that interests you with the work your company does. But yeah, feel free to apply for whichever ones you see fit, and we'll be putting those groups together. We'll be reviewing them next week and then notifying applicants shortly after that. So that'll be the real working groups around digging deep into the training packages. We will have an overarching technical committee for the whole project, but the nuts and bolts will sit down in those SME groups and really relying on, especially if you look at that list down the side there, there's some areas that are very niche, and the SMEs in those areas are going to have a lot of input into what the units related to those areas are going to look like. So encourage everyone to apply for that, or pass it on to any of your networks outside of this and let them know that the closing date for that is this Friday. We're just going to go into a general discussion now, and I might let Paul lead us off with this, and then hopefully we get some input from people on the meeting.
Yeah, this is our opportunity, raise items that are pertinent to what our needs and future needs could be. I'm going to pose something right here as a starting point, Brett, and right back at the very beginning, even at the inception of PSO and the like, there's been a lot of talk about the requirements of energy efficiency and the drive from the federal government associated with that. And I'm just wondering whether or not there's been any specific requirements or legislative framework that is going to be driven down that we may be aware of from the federal in relation to that energy efficiency concept. Sure, we've got sustainability, environmental already built in, but is it going to be potential that we need additional units or a separate unit of competence associated with it? I suppose energy efficiency is a hugely broad subject, and we all understand that this sector uses an enormous amount of energy, and yeah, I suppose it's about finessing and finalising, or even just finessing out, what are the specific areas that they're just wanting us to focus on and improve across the board. Being more specific, I suppose, is the point, and whether or not there's going to be any regulatory requirements that potentially foreseen moving forward. I don't know, has anybody got any thoughts or input that they could add to this?
You're definitely right. Energy efficiency is a very broad sword, Ben.
Yeah. Go for it, Ben. You're on mute, Ben. Maybe there's some technical issues.
Can't go off mute.
Okay.
Right.
Did you want to type into the chat?
And I'll see if I can help.
I've taken him off mute there, Brett, so you should be able to access the microphone now.
Guys.
Yeah, go, Ben.
G'day, Ben Peters here, Superior Training Centre. In regards to energy efficiency, as Paul noted, we're over 40% of the energy consumption for any building. So if the government wanted to look at energy efficiency as part of the training, not only from install, but also from a maintenance perspective, which isn't mandatory, in our sector, there could be substantial energy efficiency gains for the government should they be considering this sort of thing.
Yeah, fair comment in relation to that, Ben. I think it's about teasing out, getting down to better specifics associated with it. We touched basically on maintenance, basic maintenance aspect of things, but maybe not to the level that they may be looking to want to achieve associated with it.
Just Ian's put a comment in that he seems to be muted by the organiser too. Rach, are you still on board? Could you reach out to Kaya, and because she's the organiser, and if she can unmute everyone or save it, do it manually?
Yeah, I'm clear now to speak.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
There you go, Ian.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Energy efficiency, we consume 22% of the generated electricity in this country as an industry. So, and we find in the field significant situations where the plants are just poorly operating, haven't been commissioned properly, and just gobbling energy. So good design trumps refrigerant selection every day of the week, and energy efficiency and how to set a plant up and how to run a plant is often neglected in our industry.
So just on that, is there a gap in the training, do we feel? Or like people's input around the room?
I would have said yes.
Ben?
It's twofold, right? One, there's a gap in training for what used to happen, which was planned preventative maintenance, where you're identifying faults before they become a problem, in which case in energy efficiency, it's very easy to tell whether the motor's drawing more power now, especially under the new NCC, where you've got energy consumption meters, to be able to verify this. But it's also a case where inadequate maintenance throughout the entire industry, all the way down to the domestic side, where there's no regulated maintenance requirements.
Yeah, there's no doubt that that's very challenging, and of course that all comes up to building owners, as we're aware of. But you would think it'd be in their interests. However, it's the tenants that are potentially paying for that, and they're not worried about those costs. And that realistically, it needs to flow right through the entire chain for those benchmarks to be significantly improved. Good points, absolutely. And it's good to note that Peter mentioned there, kind of stating the obvious, but seems it needs saying. Yes. Can't have to agree with you 100% in relation to that. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, given the current size already of the Cert 3 that the apprentices are doing, does some of this additional training, you think, sit in skill sets outside of that Cert 3? I'd like to just run that up the poll for a bit of round room discussion. Some targeted skill sets.
I'd jump on that one really quickly, and this is the problem that in every forum I've ever been in, and I think you'd agree with me on this, Paul, that well, what do you take out? That's the very first question I get asked. We've got so many hours to do in the thing. What are you going to take out? So clearly, there's not enough time to teach the content that's already there properly, let alone add additional stuff into the course. So my suggestion has always been, we look at additional modules. So your Cert 3 is just your very, very basic, it gives you the basic skill sets. And then after that, I really believe in compulsory, and that's where the licensing issue all comes in. That all ties in. To maintain a license, you must use CPD, and these are the subject matters that are then picked up in CPD as continual learning. That's kind of where I'd be looking to go.
Absolutely, Ian, and that I agree with you. And that also opens up the area of people working in one particular sector, whom, let's just say they've been in RAC for a while, and now we're going to be going over and working in HVAC. Well, they've got plenty of experience in there, but there we've got a skill set set up for them in relation to that, and obviously energy efficiency can be part of that aspect of things. So I think that's going to be an industry growth and uptake and awareness that needs to be driven further and advised. But as you rightly say, and if it's not required, who's going to do it, and why should you?
Yeah, and I think that's around Peter's comment in the chat too. Diantha?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to draw some attention listening to these discussions about the enrollment numbers, the challenges, and also I realized that C3, particularly this air conditioning qualification, is a pretty tough, heavy qualification. Perhaps I'm not sure whether it is possible to actually look at consolidating some of the units together, like clustering, to gain some space in the training program, or it's already filled with so many units. Perhaps in the next review, it could be an opportunity to actually reconsider combining some of them. If there's a chance, that might actually give us some space to add these new technologies that we're talking about, like energy efficiencies and that kind of the new developments in that space. And I also actually have a question about the reason for existence in another Cert 3 in refrigeration and air conditioning qualification under MEM package. I just bumped onto that one and understood that there's another family of air conditioning qualification sitting under MEM. Are you aware of that, and why we're having these two families?
So just on the first one, we have said right from the start of the UEE review, nothing's off the table. So that's why I encourage you to put down for those subject matter expert groups, because we don't want to just, tidy up a bit of wording in the qualification. We really want to make sure this qualification is fit for purpose moving forward for a number of years, and then it can have some little tweaks, because it essentially, there'd be a few people in the room who've been in the training space for a while who know that it's essentially hasn't been changed since the 07 package, besides some little tweaks here and there. In regards to the MEM, it is used in Western Australia as the primary refrigeration air conditioning trade qual. Outside of that, it is used a little bit in the military, but the UEE is the recognised one for the rest of the country besides WA. But it doesn't actually sit under our remit, the MEM, and it's WA regulated government decision, basically, that's a required one over there. So,
right,
it's not much fun to try and map it to UEE. I know exactly. Previous experience.
Yeah, it's actually the existence of another ream of family of say for the same qualification, and I can see Box Hill Institute actually is delivering that in Melbourne.
In order to be able to map that satisfactorily, you really need to have the RTO's curriculum document. Otherwise, it's way too broad.
Yeah, a lot of the units are really broad.
I'll just put it out there and just going to say that in relation to your question there, I'm still aghast in relation to the federal government mandating that there was not going to be any duplication of training packages, and you've just highlighted, which we were all aware of, that there is a duplication. So anyhow,
it's into a packages, two training packages. existence. At least, you know, you can fix and improve one here under, you know, this program, and the other can sit in a different time scale.
It sits with a different JSC. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vanessa,
thanks.
you've had your hand up for a bit.
I was just going to say that I think with the maintenance, I think it's awareness that is probably a problem. So if commercial renewable owners have, you know, a solar array installed, people tend to think that's the end of it. So unless there's an awareness that systems need to be maintained to stay efficient, then there's not going to do it. But if there's an awareness that there is a need for it, then more commercial owners would take it up, I think. And I think we also see a lack of maintenance in large-scale renewables when facilities are nearing their end of life. So, and I'm sure there's some commercial decisions going on in that, but it probably should be, I think, someone mentioned about CPD. If it's a CPD unit or post-trade training unit, I think it's valuable, and I think as awareness grows, it would be taken up.
Yeah, good points, Vanessa.
Absolutely.
And even in the non-energy efficient industries, the old coal power plants, when they got an end date on them, they tend to drop the maintenance right off. And then when they, as we've seen in a couple of areas where they've needed to extend that life, all of a sudden they got major problems because the maintenance hasn't been kept up.
Yeah.
Right. See that often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ian, I heard your hand up for a bit.
Yeah, just a bit of background on that, Vanessa. Two things. On Vanessa's thing, we ARA did a survey for Sustainability Vic one time, and they found that 60% of the systems that we reviewed and measured, and for energy inefficiency and faults, there was 60% of the systems had faults with them. They added up totally to a significant energy cost. However, the cost to repair them or to service them outweighed the energy saving that the client would have achieved by fixing the problem. So overall, significant energy consumption, but the cost to fix individually exceeded the cost that the client would be prepared to pay for these energy savings. They didn't balance out. So that's just a bit of background on that one. And the other one,
would it be the case if they had maintained more regularly that the faults wouldn't have been that expensive to fix or not present?
Possibly. It's just a simple thing like changing a pressure switch or an incorrect setting on a pressure switch. It didn't cover the cost of the mechanic coming out there to do it in the energy that they would have saved over the year. That's how that one worked, Vanessa. And in the other reiteration of the moving the deck tears on the refrigeration Titanic, the previous one, we looked at this, Paul, I don't know whether you remember me raising that issue, but the subject matter is taught in three areas: CPC in the plumbing, so mechanical services plumbers teach it in a CPC, the MEM, the AU in the automotive, and the UEE. When I mapped that out, the UEE at that time in the old subject matters was by far the best course. There's no question about that. But I was suggesting that the UEE be the mainstay, and all of the other branches. So the CPC take the modules out of the UEE, the AU take the modules out of the UEE, and the MEM take the modules out of the UEE for their various industries. And that way we had consistency in the training. The same stuff was being taught no matter what course you did, but that fell on deaf ears. I still think it's the right way to do it.
Very challenging. I don't disagree with you, Ian. It's very challenging when you've got the different stakeholder interests. and potentially a bit of protectionism happening in relation to that. But consistent across the board is really the goal for industry as a whole. And I think especially in the current climate with shortages that we have, why do we need to have 5 different butter cakes when one butter cake will suit everybody, as an example? Yeah, Noel?
Just on that MEM package, the only reason it survived, or because the electrical regulator over there mandates you must do that qualification. So part of this review has got to include discussions with that regulator to find out what the UEE package has to include to meet their requirements. That's the only way. And then we can, if you like, get rid of the MEM package, because there's no reason to keep it.
Well, we were suggesting to the department that that we have all of the authorities, all the state authorities, in the one room at the one time to clear this nonsense up. Can you organise that one, Brett?
We could try, and it's definitely a good point, Noel, about that. The WA regulator definitely needs to be part of the conversation to see what they perceive as the gaps.
Yeah, exactly.
In the UEE,
given what we've just added to the RA51, sure, there's no gaps now.
Yeah, and just on before I swing to you, Diane, so Steve Bryant, one of my colleagues, has put some info in the chat around Box Hill Institute. They do have it on scope, but they're not delivering it anymore, I don't believe. They had it on scope for military, but the military is now using, defence is now using the UEE as well. So
just on that, I did some research yesterday for another report. There were 6 RTOs around the country with the MEM RAC qual on scope. Very minor private RTOs, basically, who I assume are doing it for RPL reasons. But yeah, Box Hill is one of them, but it doesn't really deliver it.
No, and I think that's, as you said, a lot of them are using it, maybe RPL or welcome aboard, Natalie. I just noticed you in the chat. Diantha?
Yeah. Another skill area I thought to bring to your attention is the awareness of these smart meters, energy measuring systems, like say using smart meters. This is actually common not only in this space as well as in the electrical space as well. I believe these smart meters are too smart, so we don't know exactly how these meters actually working out your energy consumption. The reason I'm pointing out is, as we said before, there's a big significant portion of electricity is used for HVAC air conditioning space, and supplementing that with the renewable energy is actually a common strategy that we can to cut down the energy cost. However, the complexities in these financial or the energy companies, where when they calculating this energy consumption or what is produced by the PV and all that, I found it's actually very, very confusing to the customer as well as to everyone, and to read and understand how this thing works. Perhaps that's another area that we can look into, is the operations of the technologies around these metering systems. I think that knowledge is not that widespread at this stage.
Fair point there, and certainly worthwhile investigating in relation to that.
It's not only for this qualification. I think it's goes across to electrical as well.
Yeah. And it's been raised in quite a few areas, right? So that around that whole smart devices and Internet of Things, and
they're too smart for us, actually.
I think my TV's too smart for me. So
exactly.
Ben?
Yeah, just quickly, I'll just note that under the NCC, energy metering is now required for mechanical services. So any new installs require energy meters and some form of BMS, if that makes sense, connected to it to meet the Section J requirements. So that covers off obviously new buildings, but not existing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably, as you know, it's the older buildings that are potentially consuming more and are not as efficient.
I think you could have as many energy meters as you like and it wouldn't make a goddamn difference. The issue becomes, and Paul, again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, you know, how many techs could understand a pH chart and know whether their system's actually working properly and map that out properly?
That's my point. Yeah, it's very complex for us to understand the way it's being done.
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, this is where, you know, we're back to how much do you fit into the Cert 3 and that level of knowledge, which we've all gained over the years of experience. You know, that's where you come to that, you know, skill set again in relation to, you know, and maybe that PE chart is all about part of that energy efficiency skill set.
Yeah, and I think before from some of the responses in the chat that people seem to see skill sets as a bit of a way forward in regards to some of these areas that are becoming more prevalent in industry and requirements and etc. Someone mentioned that there was units embedded in the Cert 4, but you know, do you need that whole Cert 4, or could you just cherry pick the skill sets that you need? Is that what industry wants more than, you know, people doing a Cert 4 over a couple of years? They can send them off to do shorter courses. So interested if anyone's got any input on that. But
well, there is more of a propensity for everybody to be doing, you know, just in time learning these days. It's been around for a long time, to be perfectly honest. You know, I see it every day in class. However, you know, for people to be proactive, they've gone from one sector to another. Just in time. Okay. Well, yeah, let's make that happen. But go back to Ian's point. Why do you have to? No.
No.
I'm not trying to be negative about it all, but, you know, and we see the positives out of it in relation to the knowledge and skills gained associated with that and the betterment right across energy efficiency, you know, longevity of equipment, you know, customers being happy and all the rest of it. But yeah, there's many benefits associated with having skill sets appropriate. Agreed. Yeah, no.
Yeah, just yeah, there's been a decline of post-trade training for years. You know, we used to have 12-month post-trade courses that people would do. Then for some reason they went to Cert 4s, and part of that trouble with that Cert 4 is it's hard to see what it is because all the Cert 3s embedded in it. So it's very hard to market it. So that makes it very difficult. So if we remove the Cert 3 out of the Cert 4 and make it an entry requirement, that'll make it clear what units are in there. And also the use of skill sets as well would be fantastic. But yeah, funding is another issue, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's a very good.
So we just need to we need that extra training at post-trade level, as Ian said. You can't chuck everything at Cert 3. You've got the core stuff there, and then you need to build on that. And the industry's so broad and so diverse and so technical now. You can't jam it all in Cert 3.
No.
And good point about that, and what we'd refer to as nesting, Noel. And that's so as part of this UEE review, as you would have seen on the subject matter expert groups, we've actually got a specialist group for diploma, advanced diploma, and the Cert 4 might fall into a bit of that as well, being an upper level qualification. And what's happened in the past, as you said, is all the Cert 3 units have been chucked into Cert 4, add some extra units and some electives and call it a Cert 4. Is that what we want? Is that what industry wants? Or should the entry requirement be the Cert 3 or equivalent, and then have those specific units so you can actually see what the Cert 4 is about more so than looking at a heap of units that are basically being pulled out of the Cert 3 and put into there.
Yeah.
So interesting to open that one up for a bit of a chat. Ian?
Yeah, on that, Brett, and that in particular, the issue we have now is that there is, as Noel just alluded to, there's so much content that has to come into the course that it's impossible to get it through in a Cert 3. It's just impossible to do. Not only that, you're lacking the resources, you're lacking the skill sets within, trainer. So you've got all of those additional factors that are eating into and stopping good quality training. That's why the licensing, and I'll go back to the licensing, the licensing issue sets a format that if we could get a national competency-based license, then we can set those courses up, because then you can add modules on. So you do your Cert 3 as your base module, then you could do, an additional, subject in ammonia for the guys that are doing the ammonia, CO2 for the guys that are doing that, hydrocarbons for the guys that are doing that. These are all refrigerants of the future, which will come into space, and everyone knows in the industry that, the industry needs significant retraining to get to the skill sets required for these refrigerants of the future, which inevitably we're going to have. So let's do it once. Let's set the format up properly, instead of just keep rearranging the goddamn deck chairs on the Titanic. And Nat's sitting in here listening to this, going, we need, her and her department involved in this. It's not just we don't want silos. We don't want silos of one person doing something, or one group doing something and one group doing something else. We need it to be coordinated, and that is something that has never happened in the industry. We've just had little silos popping up here, there, and everywhere, and everyone doing their own little bit in their own little dunghill, but not achieving a positive outcome overall for the industry. So it needs to be a coordinated approach, a structured approach with a base plus add-ons, and a format that we can get through to that. And that's a licensing system would do that for you.
Good point, Ian. Absolutely good point.
I'm just wondering,
it gives the industry the opportunity to, well, okay, this person has done this, but they've done some skill sets in that particular area, and then they've done some in that particular area, and so forth. So, they're getting a good gauge of where everything is at, as far as people that are out there and potentially looking for change or movements in their occupation locations and such. Sorry, Brad, I cut you off a bit.
You're right, mate. Just putting this out there in regard to the Cert 3, because it has been mentioned quite a few times. It's massive. And in the last iteration, or the 20 iteration, it had further elective points, waiting points added. Just thoughts on a core-only qualification with then what are the electives at the moment put into relevant skill sets. And I'm not saying this is on the agenda. I just want to put it out for thoughts in the room.
I don't see it as I just put my hand up here, but I don't see that as a bad option. It's definitely worth exploring in relation to that. But there we come back down to where Ian's going in relation to, well, I work in that particular area. There are other trades that have licensed outcomes at C4, whereas at a C3, yes, they have a restricted license, but they don't have necessarily a full license associated. That's in another sector of industry until they actually specify into those particular further electives, I suppose you could say that. Yeah.
And just on Natalie in the chat, yeah, there's certainly, people are people, and some of them will choose to take the path of least resistance. But at the moment, the electives that are being done across the board are vary in range anyway between RTOs. So I guess, yeah, but it's certainly it's just a point for discussion. Any other thoughts around that, or the Cert 3 in general before we move on? Yeah, and correct again, Natalie, if we did have that licensing scheme and we had certain modules or certain units of competency that you had to do, that would go a long way. So
yeah,
it's something that PSO as the JSC can certainly be involved in, but we definitely require the regulators. But I think a good starting point, as Noel suggested before, is that find out what the WA regulator, why they don't want to use UEE, why they want to use MEM, what they think the gaps are, and if we can address that, at least we're using a standard qualification across the country, and then that can also lead to that licensing discussion, because it does vary outside of the restricted electrical varies state to state too, but the actual, besides your Arctic license, whether you're licensed as a refrigeration air conditioning mechanic, certainly varies. Ben?
Yeah, look, just on licensing, just to be clear, there are significant differences all the way around the country. As an example, up in Queensland, you need anywhere from a Cert 2 to install a split system, Cert 3 to do domestic air conditioning up to 4 levels. Then you need Cert 4 and diploma if you're going unlimited high-rise. Because of the licensing organisations throughout Australia having different requirements, it does cause dramas throughout the packages, right? As well as the fact that let's say in Queensland's the only only state or territory that has a separate hydrocarbon licensing requirement, right? So in regards to the core/electives, the core that's there definitely needs to be there. But maybe, again, a discussion needs to be held with licensing in regards to, do we need a Cert 2, let's say, for labourers or people working in construction in the HVAC field, so that way they've got a limited volume of knowledge, and again, across the country, X amount for split system, X amount for Cert 3, domestic, say Cert 4 or whatever for commercial or VRV or whatever the case may be, and high-rise being, Cert 4 with central plant, as an example. Right, but again, a lot of it comes back down to licensing and their requirements. That's my opinion.
Yep. Ian?
Just a couple of things on that. First of all, the air conditioning, refrigeration is not air conditioning. Refrigeration in every air conditioning system, there is a refrigeration system, but it is not the industry, and we can't exclude the rest of the industry for the sake of a focus on split systems and air conditioning, high rise, whatever it be. The second thing is that the new refrigerants, so the HFOs, the CO2s, the hydrocarbons other than Queensland, and ammonia, all have engineering, all have safety issues occurred, and all are not required to be licensed. So you don't need a license to work on ammonia. You don't need a license to work on any of the HFOs. You can blow that crap off till the cows come home. Fill your dams up with PFAS. That's a bit of a political one, that, but I'll throw it in. You can do whatever you like with those refrigerants. You do not require a license. It's not required by ARC. And this is the whole madness of it. We're getting a more dangerous situation with a lesser skill requirement and we're not acknowledging that. We need to acknowledge that within the system of training.
Absolutely, very good points.
And maybe just on that, the changes in refrigerants, I might throw this one to you, Paul, just to put it out there around the Cert 2 splits and heats pump qual.
Yep.
Because obviously the changes in that space, but you're more across, you would be the technical expert more than me on that. So do you want to open that up for a quick chat?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I'll start off, and I think there's been a mandate from way back that the refrigerants units in the Cert 3 and in the Cert 2 do need review and update to encompass, in particular, safety awareness aspects and knowledge of the refrigerants just in general to start off with. But then the safety awareness, so everybody is getting that appropriate training. And this is exactly right. Peter mentions there, we don't need, Tamahari issues occurring in Australia in a major way like they did in New Zealand. So there's no doubt that that's going to be part of the RA units of competence review. I'm pretty certain that Natalie would agree with me in relation to that. The department would be certainly favourable in relation to that.
Yeah, we've had feedback from the department for a while back on that. Where does that leave the Cert 2 split? So, because they're going to be adding a fair bit into that, I'd imagine.
Well, yeah, it all depends on to what level you're actually going to hold. Is it necessary to actually have ammonia awareness in relation to split systems? The answer is no. However, CO2's right out there, propane, the A2s, the A3s, the naturals, they're all part and parcel of that particular qualification for that equipment. And potentially moving forward, there's going to be less of regulated controlled substances. Don't know how long they'll be still being introduced, but they're stepping back now out of really into the new HFO refrigerant area and naturals. That it definitely needs an update and a look.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When you go into the HFOs, though, you take R32, for example, or even any of the HFOs, then you're in the hazardous zone. On an ammonia system, according to the electrical, 6079 or whatever, I can't remember the number of the thing, but ammonia, you have to do a hazard analysis.
Oh yeah.
For an ammonia plant room.
Mm-hmm.
It technically should be for 1, 2, 3, 4 YF. It should be exactly the same. Certainly for R32, which has the same flammability characteristics of ammonia. And I've seen ammonia plants go up with a big bang. Don't worry about that. So you're into the hazardous zone training for these refrigerants that are now coming in, Brett. And there's no acknowledgement of that. If people. The air conditioning industry totally ignores, I would guarantee you go to a large chiller with a significant charge of HFO in it, there will be no hazard assessment done in the plant room, but it's legally required. And the non-industry knowledge, people don't even understand it.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
I agree. Like multiple high rises, the use of multi-head systems, VRV systems, and all that sort of stuff. The quantity of refrigerants that may be on those specific plant rooms at specific levels of high rise and all that type of thing has that due diligence potentially being done associated with there. And of course, this opens up massive litigations in relation to potential insurances and who knows. But the overall industry needs to drive the awareness and open it up so that we're mitigating any of those challenges associated with it. And of course, the update of existing workers associated with these new potential hazards which they may or not, oh yeah, may or not completely recognise, because they've just progressed with it, and they've, oh, well, it's just like working with old R12 or, methyl chloride. If you want to go sulfur, wait, how far do you want to go back? But yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point was raised by Natalie in the chat as well, which you obviously seen, Paul. And we really have to take that into account when we're, if we're adding stuff to those Cert 3 units.
Yep.
Are those units the right ones for existing tradespeople to come back in and do, or do we need a more niche unit that sits in a skill set that for existing workers? Because the unit in the Cert 3, we might end up adding stuff into a unit that's quite big that they don't need, 50% of the content of for existing workers. So that's another consideration, certainly. Look, we've got some great stuff from this conversation today, I think. So back on that request for advice.
We're in a massive transition again, evolving through to naturals, that the industry is right across from controlled substances, right the way through the whole gamut, which many in the industry have experienced. But for the younger generations, interesting point.
I got asked, I had to fill out just a little note. I had to fill out in professional indemnity and public liability insurance a PFAS questionnaire by the insurance company.
Okay.
So that's starting to come in.
Yep. So they're aware of it.
Yeah, they're aware of it.
Yeah. So, I don't know if it's a massive flag at Safe Work Australia. It'd certainly be a flag, but maybe not as focused as much. You get the two of those things colliding. There's potential for upskilling necessary. Yeah, I agreed, Natalie. They're dealing with them in relation to in the Cert 2s. Absolutely.
Feed pumps.
Here's the other thing is that there's also the safety aspect of things in relation to toxicity, flammability levels in relation to there are current units in relation to install, for example, for each of the and are people aware that I'll put a unit in for grandma over the weekend and whatnot, and it could all work out very well. But in the unlikely event of something going wrong, and there is potential, that I didn't know that. Well, that doesn't really stand up at all.
So just a question from Veronica there in the chat, with Paul or Noel, maybe.
Where do you stand with the plumbing apprenticeship now, including heat pumps and AC on their training? Well, my understanding in relation to this, and I'll stand corrected, Noel, that they are importing and utilising the current Cert 2 units of competence from the electro package.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, in relation to that, Veronica. So, and of course, the inclusion of heat pumps. So, heat pump technology, they're two different varieties. We have the fully self-contained heat pump unit. So the tank and the system is all one and self-contained. The other one is obviously where you have a split type of a system associated with heat pump, hot water pool aspect of things, which that certainly need to be mindful associated with how that unit fits, the heat pump unit fits in with the Cert 2 in plumbing. Let's have a look, Natalie.
it is a concern that's been raised with us around that plumbing space. But
there are heat pumps with hydrocarbons too. Yep, absolutely there are, and CO2.
Yep.
So, yeah. Yes, and for repair of something like that piece of equipment, no disrespect to the plumbing industry, but that, the vapor compression system isn't really necessarily, they may not necessarily be completely across it, shall we say.
Well, they're not allowed under the refrigerant handling license to repair, only to install.
Yeah, but we're talking about natural refrigerants now, Noel.
Yeah, that's true.
So is outside the remit.
Mm-hmm.
This comes back to licensing again for you, Ian. Or the potential thereof.
Well, it's just, I mean, and we've seen, numerous examples of the poor installations, of the heat pumps that are going in. Like, there's no energy saving achieved whatsoever. It's just, it's a big, look at all the heat pumps we put in. But it's just as bad as big bats, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
There's no energy saving achieved, but because of the poor installation.
Yeah.
And no monitoring, no police out there on the beat. Anyway.
All right. Is anyone?
It's certainly a very good subject, and I think it does need to be further teased out. I think there is a mandate there overall in relation to safety awareness across the board in the Cert 3 and the Cert 2 for the relevant refrigerants associated with that. That'll be a given, in my opinion, but I think it's there. And
that the upskilling of existing workers, I think,
yes,
definitely that's probably a separate piece too.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Has anyone got any other topics? As fascinating as this is, and I know some of the people in this room be happy to talk for a while longer on it.
Can I just ask a question, Brett, in relation to, I know that there was some information that came through from Ben in relation to maintenance and fire in the fire space for HVAC technicians, especially around fire compliance. Has there been any movement there? I notice you have another tag for that.
Yeah, look, we've got all that logged,
Yep.
And when we get to those SME groups, any of that stuff that's been logged by Ben or whoever along the way, Noel's given us some feedback, and even the department stuff from early on will be tabled as part of those SME groups for sure.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian.
So we'll, if there is, there obviously is going to be cross sector items here in relation to fire and security and then RAC. Will there be conversations coming back and forth associated with that?
100%.
Great.
So those initial, I don't have it on me now, but we do have a slide that sort of shows it, but it's very busy. But those initial SME groups will then sort of not merge, but they'll be definite, because even between between electrical and refrigeration, there's going to have to be some where the common units are shared, instrumentation, all that stuff. So there's definitely a plan further down in the project. The HVAC R group at the moment will be looking at the quals as a whole, and then predominantly the RA units within them, and the RL units obviously as well. So yeah, that's the plan there, is to sort of, that definitely won't be isolated. This group's just going to work on that all the way through. There's got to be some cross.
Thanks, mate. All good. Let's screw down at the top.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Has anybody else wanted to raise anything further associated with it? With the meeting today? I know we've still got time as per the schedule. I'm picking up, Brett, a general item that let's get the Cert 3 and then we'll build skill sets out of that for the industry sectors.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a fair comment.
Yeah.
Obviously, whatever we do has got to get supported, and but I think particularly in this space, the Cert 3 is probably the starting point, without a doubt. What the Cert 4 is, what the skill sets, what the diplomas look like after that Cert 3. It's a big body of work, the Cert 3, I think. And then we branch out from there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Very, very good.
We might bring you along to the discussions, Natalie, if you want.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, Steve Hall's on the road at the moment, but he's our WA connection, so we'll certainly be making a note to get onto that sooner rather than later around that MEM and UEE and why it's a preference in WA and what we can potentially do to change that if they were satisfied with the UEE.
Well, I could raise something, Brett, in relation to the fact of when it comes to qualifications being issued by RTOs and the requirement for the RTO to actually have evidence associated with making sure that people can actually do the skills as an outcome, rather than, it's just knowledge based. We all know that knowledge is important, but I think with the current climate, we need people that can actually do things and do things safely and competently, satisfactorily, to meet all safety, manufacturers, client outcomes, government legislation.
Yeah, for sure.
Any thoughts in relation to that from an RTO point of view, from people out there? You want RTOs to make sure that they have evidence collected that people can effectively undertakes skills safely. For as long as I've been in TAFE, which has been a little while now, that's something that we've always strived for in where I've been associated with anyway. Yes.
Alrighty.
Very good point, Natalie. Yep, and thanks for that.
Alrighty, we might move on, but I would like to just really encourage everyone in the room, if you haven't already, to register your interest, if you have got it, to be an SME, because there's been some good conversation here. Those requests for advice when they go out, I'm going to have to listen to all this again to come up with some questions around that, because we've talked across some pretty broad areas, but the questions will be based on stuff that people have raised and stuff we've discussed here. So I really encourage everyone to find the time to knock that out. And it actually got mentioned in a tag we ran last week, and we've taken it on board that when we send them out, we'll send a calendar reminder for maybe like 2 days before they're due, just to pop up in your calendar that it's due, because I know everyone has got other lives and other paying jobs outside of PSO's remit. So just that reminder that, the request for advice is going to finish if it's, say, the Friday, that a calendar invite will pop up for you on the Wednesday, just as a prompt if you've got the email and haven't got round to doing it. So we took that on board from the UET tag, and we're happy to run with that for sure. Our next tag for the HVAC R group is Tuesday the 21st, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. And watch your inbox for those requests for advice. And I guess still open to any broad questions or statements or anything before we We have got 10 minutes, or we can wrap it up. But I really appreciate the input and the time people are putting in this space.
So just
Vanessa?
Sorry, go Vanessa.
Just going back to the hazardous area stuff, I think it's just important to note that someone who can assess a hazardous area, you know, whether it is or not, is not someone who's done the 5 days training in hazardous areas. It's beyond that. It really is a professional consultant that works in that area. Just because we're talking about it, was just coming into my mind. I've worked in hazardous areas myself, so I know it is a real specialist skill, and not necessarily even electrical inspectors with hazardous class endorsements are qualified to assess hazardous areas. It was just, if we had an expectation that tradespeople could do that, would be wrong. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, that's a really good point.
Good point. So with Brett, with some of the questions in relation to, you know, like getting some clarification around energy efficiency requirements and that the federal government are mandating associated with it, is the feedback to the group associated with questions like that. How could, and any other items that we've raised, how can that be, how will that occur, I suppose is the question. Like, it just doesn't go into a bucket and then it stays in the bucket. It maybe potentially is worked through with, you know, some sort of feedback, or at least something, an acknowledgement thereof.
Yeah, look, we can certainly, pardon the pun, be the conduit, I guess, in some of those discussions, and certainly tap into the network here. And I mean, there's some people in this room who are going to be at the forefront of those discussions too, or their organisations. So it is part of our, you know, we can't do it as a project as such, but as part of our remit is industry stewardship, and that all falls under industry stewardship. So yeah, certainly not set and forgotten here. We'll be taking that up to our senior management within PSO, and how do we progress what industry's saying here and what the concerns are, and, you know, and as I said, like, we've got Nat here, we've got Noel from ARC, you know, and we've got those other networks already established as well around the training package development, but it doesn't mean that we can't foster a voice in those other areas, I guess.
Sure. Well, that's great. Has anybody got anything further they'd like to raise at all? Well, I certainly thank everybody for attending today and being a part of the process of, you know, looking after our industry and, you know, manufacturers and the like. That basically everybody relies on us. They don't realise that, whether they realise it or not. So yeah, it is an important sector.
100%. And just, yeah, back Paul up. Thanks for your attendance. A couple of people had to drop off, obviously, but we've got a good core still here. So look, I really find through the group, Paul runs RACTA, which is the training side, but then the other side, this is probably one of our better tags as far as having a broad cross-section of regulators, of government interested. It's not just RTOs, but some of the other ones tend to be. So thanks again for all attending. We will wrap it up, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
No worries. I'm happy to wrap it up too. I know there's still chat going on, Brett, in relation to items.
I'll stop the recording.
Okay.
You should still be able to